Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android. We recommend you use Spotify or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. I tell you, it is going all day long. If you want to talk Heat, it's not a Facebook group. You don't need to do that. We see some silly stuff on there. It's not Twitter where it's the same five people tweeting all day long. No, this is where you can communicate with Heat fans who are into it. They're educated. They follow the podcast. They follow everything. They have their own opinions. And the other thing is, like, it's not trashed up like Twitter is. So make sure you check it out. The new Discord server, semi-new Discord server. Also, we've got plenty of stuff on there. We'll mention some of what Greg Sylvander has been putting on the host updates there. He has a lot of stuff related to the draft that's going to be coming up. So make sure you check it out. It's the Off the Floor Discord server. Link right here in the description on the podcast feed and on the YouTube channel. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network, who's our friend Nelson and his team over at c-armandstaffing.com. That's c-armandstaffing.com. That's for mobile C-arm staffing services. Give them a call now at 561-891-9620. That's 561-891-9620. Basically, the short story here is that if you work in a medical office or in a hospital, you need to reach out to them. They will bring the x-ray equipment and the staffing to you. Good people who live here in South Florida. They're big Miami Heat fans. They've been to some of our watch parties as well. Everybody's got a chance to meet Nelson and his family. Check them out. Trustworthy folks. 561-891-9620. 561-891-9620. Mobile C-arm staffing services or c-armandstaffing.com. And now, today's episode.
Down to Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. It's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
Hi, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. We got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. And like I mentioned, check out Off the Floor. We'll be posting on there throughout the week. All right, we're getting set for a likely NBA Finals between Dallas and Boston. I'd like to know what the numbers were on that prior to the postseason starting or even prior to the regular season starting. But we're going to focus here on the Heat, and we're going to deep dive a little bit more on a backcourt. And there was a picture that circulated of the two of them hanging out, Terry Rozier and Rozier-Herro. And it does appear that there's been a friendship that's been developed there. That's good. Obviously, you want chemistry between teammates. We just don't know if they're going to be teammates. We don't know if they're going to be teammates here, going to be teammates somewhere else, or if one of them is going to be gone and the other is here, and which one that is going to be. But what we wanted to look at today was, can a backcourt like this work? Because it seems like, first thing, we didn't see a huge sample size on it. Alex is going to get to the stats in the second half of this episode. But also, it doesn't seem to be the trend of the NBA to be going with smallish backcourts. And this is not like even the 90s, 80s, 90s era of Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas, winning championships together. But that was a physical small backcourt on a physical team that had a huge front line with Rick Mahorn and Bill Laimbeer and either Mark Aguirre or Adrian Dantley. These days, it seems like you've got at least one guy who's a legit 6'5", and we can talk about Tyler's height, okay, but a legit 6'5", stockier, lengthier than what the Heat currently have. And so I wanted to go through some backcourts here, Alex, on who the general starters have been and kind of how the Heat measure up, so to speak. So one backcourt is the Boston Celtics, Drew Holiday and Derek White. Derek White is taller than Terry Rozier. Drew and Tyler are about the same height. But as far as wingspan, right? Like that's where Boston has it, or is it just over Tyler, not over Terry?
Well, it's wingspan and strength, I think. I think that's going to be kind of the theme with some of these backcourt pairings as we go through them, is, just to kind of go over that backcourt, which may or may not start together next season. Like we don't know how it's going to play out. And, who they're gonna go with, because like they finished the season off while Tyler was out with Terry and Duncan, two mixed results, which we'll get into like you said in the second half. But Terry is 6'2" with a 6'8" wingspan, right? So he's small, but he's long. He's not very strong though. And then Tyler, 6'5" with a 6'3" wingspan, so negative there, and another guy who's not very strong. I think both guys are not like terrible defenders, but probably putting them together, I don't know if that is the best mix. And then when you compare them to, like you mentioned, Boston, Derek White and Drew are both about 6'4" with a 6'7" or 6'7.5" wingspan from what we were looking up, and they're both stronger. So that both of them are as we've seen, very strong defensive guards who can guard up, who can guard down. I think even if Drew is not necessarily in his absolute peak anymore, he's still very good at what he does. And having a dynamic defensive backcourt like that, of course, on top of the other talent they have, like it's just insanely helpful. And that, like, I hate giving him credit, but you got to give Brad Stevens credit for doing a great job complementing his stars with pieces that make sense and are kind of, again, I hate to say it, but they're kind of right under all-star level. Like Drew Holiday, Derek White, Porzingis, all these guys are very good players. And yeah, I think they're probably, they're definitely the best defensive backcourt in the East. And then, you compare it to some other ones, right? Like I think you look at the Milwaukee one. That one is probably more comparable to
Yeah.
the Heat. And it's funny because Dame actually has a very similar height and wingspan profile to Terry. Like it's about 6'2" with a 6'7", so slightly shorter wingspan than Terry's at 6'8". So that's funny, and that's funny looking back on it now. But Patrick Beverly was starting for them. That's another guy who has a similar kind of wingspan, long wingspan and similar height. I think he's a little bit stronger than Dame, Terry, and Tyler. So, but again, that's not really a great defensive backcourt. Even when they were starting Malik Beasley, like he's got some some height compared to some of these guys that we mentioned. Like he's about 6'4", 6'5" with a 6'7" wingspan, except he's not a good defender and not very strong. So those are the two, kind of that you consider to be the top of the East. And then I was looking at some other ones, and it's, like the Knicks backcourt isn't necessarily that huge, right? But it has been extremely successful because of their chemistry and the way that they, kind of complement each other. I mean, Dante DiVincenzo has just had a career year playing for the Knicks. I think he's gonna get himself paid big time whenever he's due for that. But he's about, I think, 6'4" with a 6'6" wingspan. I would say not as strong as Drew, but not too frail. Can play against size at times. And Brunson is not a good defender. Not very tall, but they have a roster where they've kind of built around him to not have to, they're not putting him next to another small guy. And I think that's kind of the theme here, is not having too many of those guys. And I don't know, like, what's the Sixers starting backcourt? They had Lowry starting at one point. We know about him. Maxey is another guy, I think 6'2" with a 6'7" wingspan. Not very strong. He was supposed to be a better defender when he came out of Kentucky. That hasn't really been the case. But the guy that we kind of forgot about, DeAnthony Melton, he was their starter for a while before he got hurt this season. One of the kind of the best perimeter, the point of attack defenders, I guess sub all NBA, all defense point of attack defenders. And he's about 6'2" with a 6'8" wingspan. So we're seeing a lot of similarities here. And Melton is, really strong at that position. And I think having one is okay. You can work around it if you build the proper team, around them on defense. But two is probably pushing it.
Well, and the other issue with it is that if you were to say, okay, who would you sub in as a starter for either of them, you would say Duncan Robinson, who gives you more height, but doesn't necessarily give you more length, and physicality. And so you kind of don't have that option in the backcourt. You saw them out of necessity use Caleb Martin in the backcourt. Okay, I know, again, our guy Sean Rochester is going to get on me about positions. He'll call this out, but you did use Caleb, who at least gave you a little bit more length and athleticism at the position. But another one, I looked at was Indiana. Halliburton and Nembhard. who are, and again, they've used Neesmith, they've used Nemhart, but Halliburton's a legit 6'5". Like that's, he's a legit 6'5". He's wiry. I
Six
wouldn't
eight
call him
wingspan.
not right. So more of a wingspan. So this is what I'm saying. Like these other guys tend to have, it's rare to have two, on the short side here in the backcourt. Now, Atlanta tried it. What is DeJounte's wingspan's got to be, right? I mean, he plays like a forward in a lot of ways, but obviously he's playing with Trey or has been.
Well, before we get to that, just really quick with the Indiana point, you mentioned Neesmith. He is 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan. As I
Okay.
look up DeJounte over here really quickly, but and Andrew Nemhart 6'4" with about a 6'6" wingspan, I believe, and Brunson 6'2" with a 6'4" wingspan. Like we're seeing a lot of the same things here. As far as DeJounte, he stands at 6'4". I believe his wingspan was 6'10". Yep, it is.
Yeah. See, I mean, exactly. That's different. I mean, I think what we're getting at here, is that you can have a Rozier, but then you better have a two guard next to him who has a significant wingspan, right? And plus strength. And that's where we're at. And I think that's why, even as I like sort of the offensive creativity potential of this backcourt, everything else scares me. Everything else scares me. Like defensively, and then there is also offensive fit and learning how to play off of each other, who's going to handle, who's not going to handle. I mean, you mentioned the chemistry between Brunson and DiVincenzo. Part of that is they played together in college. I mean, that's right. So, I mean, and then you throw Josh Hart in. You've basically got three-fifths of the Villanova starting lineup in there. And the other thing is DiVincenzo kind of understands what he is and doesn't seem
Off
to be
ball,
want to be
connective.
anything more. Right. So right. And
Same
Tyler,
thing with Hart.
views himself as more of a star scorer. And I don't want this to become a pick on Tyler episode. There are things he does very well. But when we talk about fit, we keep coming back to the same thing here. And on the other side of this episode, we will get into the numbers. I'll let you handle that. But we've talked about the problem of the two of them. There's already sort of a Tyler Jimmy. How does that thing work? And now you're throwing Rozier into the mix, and now it's a Tyler Rozier. How does that thing work? And then you don't really have a replacement two guard for Tyler that solves your problems in terms of physicality and length. And so it does say, okay, this requires a roster adjustment. Like I'm still okay with the Rozier move, even in that context, because this is a quality player you added to your organization who I do believe, and I think he would have been a factor for them in the playoffs if he'd been healthy. But I do believe if he got back to health, you could probably recoup the asset that you gave up for him. So it's not a disaster by any means, but this is also not a perfect fit. As much as I am not going to back off from it, I supported the trade. I like the trade. I still would do the trade, but it may now require another trade.
We didn't even mention the Magic, by the way, who have like a
Oh,
bevy of 6'4" guards who are good defenders, like Jalen Suggs, who is an all
Suggs.
defensive guy.
Yeah.
Fultz is a good defensive player who is about 6'4" with a long wingspan.
Well, look at OKC with Dort and SGA. I mean, both of them have wingspans
Giddey.
that exceed, and Giddey when he's in there too. I mean, and look, Denver. Okay, I mean KCP. What is KCP's wingspan? I'm sure it's greater than Tyler's, right? So you're looking at KCP playing with Murray. Murray always surprised. Murray's the one guy. Like people think of Murray as a small guard. I'm not really sure why. Like when you watch Murray play up close, he's not a small guard. So they do not have a small backcourt. And then they throw in Porter and Gordon. We talk about functional size and that kind of length
Two
with Jokic.
6'10" guys with a giant who can do everything on the
right,
floor.
right. Like okay, again, maybe you could survive with a small backcourt like a Dumars Isaiah Thomas backcourt if they were Dumars and Isaiah Thomas, okay, Hall of Famers, and you had Mahord, Dantley / Aguirre and Lambeer up front. And then John Sally and Dennis Rodman, by the way, coming off the bench, who were two of the longest front court players of their time, okay, in terms of athleticism and getting above the rim and defending. The Heat don't have any of that. They've got Bam. And so it's like you're taking, and I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this podcast and saying, we've been saying this. I understand it. Like I've been a little late to the party here on this whole size issue. Okay. But you can't ignore that the league has gone the other direction now. You just can't ignore, because I think part of where Spo was going with this whole thing, and it started with pace and space, and then putting fours, smallish, putting threes at the four spot and all that. He wanted versatility. He wanted for the switching. He wanted flexibility, and all of that. But the problem is now there are bigger players coming into the league who can do some of those things. So now those guys are being drafted and they're developing, and the Heat don't have a counter to any of that. And so and they're still playing the smaller guys. And it's another reason why, again, I think they'll let Caleb Martin walk. And you can make an argument that they shouldn't overpay Haywood Highsmith either, because, right? Because, I mean, he gives you some, but again, he's starting from, what is he, 6'5", 6'6", right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think both, like, Highsmith has a really long wingspan, somebody who doesn't seem that tall, but it feels like he plays taller because of his insane wingspan, which I don't have in front of me right now. But, you mentioned those guys, and they're going to factor into this conversation too, because, like you mentioned there, the other, like, if one of them between Terry and Tyler is not starting, right? A lot of times, like, everybody wanted Duncan to start, and he was starting there towards the end of the season. And look, I'm not going to get into all the stats right now, but since we mentioned that specific combination, like that four together, that starting lineup that we saw towards the end of the season with Terry.
Hold it. I want you to. We got a second half of the episode to get to. Hold it. Let me mention the two sponsors. Come back with
wait,
the break.
Before you get to that, because I'm going to get into the stat. What I want to say is, like, the numbers aren't great, right? So if you're not going to start Duncan at the two, and you're not starting one of Terry or Tyler, and you want to have more functional size, the other option kind of becomes, well, maybe you start a Caleb at the two, which we talked about, I think, earlier in the season, like, as a possibility. We never really got to see it, not too much of it, at least. And, you could even say that for Haywood, who's not a natural two it by any. I think he's more of a natural three, kind of a small four. But it's like that's what's on the roster right now. If you want to add more size to your backcourt, or Hake, something like that.
The shots for all three of them are too inconsistent to do that. I don't think you can do it. I don't think you can do it. I mean, we've seen flashes from all three of them. If you want to throw Hawkes in the mix, we've seen flashes of them being able to knock down those corner threes, but still nobody, and even some of the wing threes. But the problem is nobody's fearing them. Yeah. So it's and all of them go through these stretches, particularly Caleb, who it's just like was on fire for 3 weeks coming out of the All-Star break, but he had other stretches where it was like, what is that? What happened to his form? And Haywood also. I mean, Haywood had some 4 and 5 3 games where they left him open, and then he'd go 2 weeks without. Seemed like he didn't make one. His percentage ended up fine. But again, I think people overrate the whole idea of 3-point percentage. It's for some guys, I know you say everything comes out in the wash and regression or progression to the mean or whatever, but some guys are feared and some guys aren't. That's just the nature of it. I mean, Duncan could be shooting 32% for three for half. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's volume is part of it, but also Duncan could be shooting 32% for three for the whole first half of the season. He's still going to be guarded like a shooter in the second half of the year. It's just there is reputation plays into it, form plays into it. And just the span, and that leads to the spacing, and the spacing is just not going to be there with Caleb or Haywood playing, in the backcourt. I thought what you were going to say, and I do want to get to the sponsors here, but I thought what you were going to say was,
I forgot about DeLon.
Right. Well, DeLon made some threes too, and he gives you that length. But again, is he going to, at age 31, going on 32, is he suddenly become a feared 3-point shooter? He's not. He's capable of making threes, and he showed it in the postseason, but he's not that. So it's this balance of getting the length and look. It's why 3 and D, is one of the most valuable positions in the league. If you can find one, you keep one. But again, I go out west. Like, they just, even if you look at the Clippers, if you look, they are small from a wingspan, a length perspective. They don't have an option on the roster to fix it. That's where I'm at with it, and that's one of the things they need to address. I thought the direction you were going to go was, say, if you're going to go with a small backcourt, then you have to get size next to Bam, which they kind of have done with Jovic. But again, that's a work in progress. I think this is where some Heat fans would say, okay, well, put a 5 next to Bam, but then you just become slower. And I
played 0 minutes together, by the way. Terry, Tyler, Nico, Jimmy, and Bam, 0 minutes, according to pvpstats.net.
Well, that tells you everything. All right, well, we'll tell you more about some of the lineup data when we come back. I do want to mention a couple great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Sign up for Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN. This is legal sports betting. I tell people all the time, what's the difference here from the other legal sports place that you can bet in South Florida? They take a vig. That basically means they're taking a tax on your money. Okay, Better Edge doesn't do that. They're allowing you to find the line you want. For instance, okay, by the time you listen to this, the game might be over. But the Panther game tonight, there's one line up there, but then you could go into the markets and find a whole bunch of other lines. So if you just have confidence that the Panthers are going to win by 2 goals, or 1 goal, or 3 goals, or whatever it is, you can go find that in the marketplace somewhere and decide whether or not you want to deal with what you'd be giving or getting in that situation. So much different process. Better Edge, it's a marketplace. Use the code 5RSN. Also, we run our competitions there. We will have an NBA Finals competition with some great prizes. Also, check out Prize Picks. It is back legal in the state of Florida. Make sure you use the code 5, FIVE, get that initial deposit matched up to $100. Legal again in the state of Florida. They changed the game a little bit. It's the arena game. There's really not much of a difference. The only difference is you can't do flex plays, okay? And you can't go up to 6 players, but everything else is the same. They've got the tacos back there. They've got the goblins, the demons, and all that stuff. And I can tell you, I've been winning more since they switched the game back. So go to prizepicks.com, use the code 5, FIVE, get that initial deposit matched up to $100. Again, when NBA season is over, you can still play. If baseball is your thing, MMA, boxing, it's all on there. All right, let's do this. Let's go to the lineup data here. What did Rozier-Herro, Bam, and Butler look like?
Rozier-Herro, Bam, and Butler. So in 118 minutes, and that's I'm gonna try to like emphasize that in some of this stuff. And 118 minutes is not that much of a sample. There's some even smaller samples I'm gonna cite here, and some bigger ones. So not everything is on the same level. It's just kind of a quick disclaimer here. But those four together, Rozier, Tyler, Jimmy, and Bam, negative 1.33 net. So pretty below average with a 118 offensive rating, which is pretty good, but a 119 defensive rating, which is not. And, in those lineups, the Heat shot 53% from 2, 43% from 3, and opponent shot about 59% from 2 and 42% from 3. So that's like just to kind of set the tone here, right? Mm-hmm. Offense is pretty good, right? Like you added scoring around Jimmy and Bam. You added guys who can create, and it shows there. Like the Heat had a decent offense. The problem is the defense, right? And then when you break down some of the different combinations with certain guys on and certain guys off, to me, that's where it gets really interesting. So now I'm going to cite the two smallest sample sizes here, kind of group them together.
Well, you already mentioned Jovic is not in any of these, right? 0 minutes.
No, so I'm the only thing that I have here with Jovic is the kind of the stats with that end of season starting lineup, which I hinted at earlier, which was a negative 6.3 net rating in 181 minutes. So again, not very much. But that's not good at all.
No, it's not good. But again, 0 minutes with the four we talked about: Rozier, Herro, Bam, and Butler. With those exact 0 minutes,
0
and
minutes.
That would presumably be the starting lineup next year.
Yeah, and then it's like everybody thought, like including us, that like Duncan as a starter was going to work well with Terry, and everybody wanted Nico, including us, to start. It's like the results were very bad. Now I'm not saying it can't get better, but that's a lineup that you think would be able to score pretty well. And their offensive rating was just under 112, which is not awesome or anything. And it had a 118 defensive rating. So that starting lineup with Terry, Duncan, and Nico didn't really figure it out. And now you get to these two smaller sample sizes here, which is Terry plus Tyler plus Bam with no Jimmy. That one is about a plus 15 net. Now, this is only in 44 minutes, which is a very small sample size. 44 minutes is nothing, right? But Terry, Tyler, and Bam, that might be a lineup combination they can go to, right? Like I said, 15 net rating with a 132 offensive rating. So that is fluky, right? Like they're not going to be able to keep that up over a whole season. But to be able to be that potent offensively, I think without Jimmy, there's something to that. And I think you're going to have to figure out some of the combinations in your rotation, right? The defense is still not good in that lineup. But the offense is just super potent. And then when you look at an even smaller sample size, which is Terry plus Tyler plus Jimmy with no Bam in only 22 minutes. So even smaller, right? Only 22 minutes, negative 45 net rating. So as soon as you take Bam off the floor, and it's a 100 offensive rating, 145 defensive rating. So the defense is absolutely abysmal. That without even looking it up, I can tell you 145 defensive rating is probably twice as bad,
Worse,
maybe
worse
the worst
than
in the
NBA,
league.
worse than NBA history, probably.
Probably, yeah. And tiny
Yeah.
sample size, but it's like it's not even like your offense is good in those minutes, even though it's your three best shot creators on the floor, pretty much, with Terry, Tyler, and Jimmy. So I think it's all about combinations here, right? And then just to
Mhm.
kind of finish off what we have here, I know it's a lot. Bear with me, folks, but I'm trying to get to something here. When you look at Jimmy plus Bam plus Tyler, no Terry, right? So let's say in a scenario where Terry's not playing, let's say you want to bring him off the bench next year, whatever. Though that combination, the three of them with no Terry, was a plus 4.11 net rating. So
Mhm.
all the talk
Mhm.
about Jimmy and Bam and Tyler
Yeah.
not being this great offense together, it's not amazing, right? Like it's a 114.5 offensive rating, but their defensive rating is 110. So I think you can look at that, and then you look at Jimmy and Bam with Terry, no Tyler. It's
Mhm.
similar, a plus 5.26 net rating. The defensive rating is almost exactly the same as a no Terry lineup, and the offensive rating is actually a little bit better with with Jimmy, Bam, Terry, no Tyler. So you're seeing
Mhm.
one of them off the floor, and they're doing stuff like they're defending pretty well. The offense is good
Mhm.
enough. The two of them together with Bam is very good, but in a really small sample. But when you put all four of them together, like I mentioned up top, like those results haven't been the best. I already mentioned the Tyler and Duncan lineups, how that hasn't been the answer, right? So
Mhm.
it does kind of feel like, with the roster as it currently stands, there are no easy answers because if you're not starting like Terry and Tyler together, you're not starting, Duncan with one of them two together. You might have to talk about, like I mentioned before the break, a Caleb or Haywood or Delon or Jaquez. Like you got to go outside the box and have two of those.
Heat,
No,
Heat,
three of
Heat
those guys
fans are
are
going to
free
lose their
agents.
minds.
No,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm not
Heat
saying
fans
this
are going
is
to lose
a.
their minds. No,
You have to go to
and the
different
other,
options, and it's like because there's
but
no easy answer, and it's everything is telling you the four of them together is not the greatest fit, and you might have to bench one of them. But it's just like there is no easy answer for who you put in there instead.
well, the other problem here is we don't know that Duncan Robinson's going to be the same player next year if he's here. I mean, I hope he is. He expressed optimism with his last interview with the media that he would be. He just needs rest, but
Yeah,
he's never had a back injury before, and back injuries are about as bad as you can possibly find. And plus, his particular back injury, at least the way, and I'm no doctor, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night, but at least the way that people talk about that back injury, it is something that gets worse over time. So to count on him being your starting two guard next year with one of these two guys, it does though give you an indication of why when Riley spoke to the media and answered my question when I asked him about what UD said about Tyler coming off the bench, and he said Tyler's a starter, and he did say at some point in that very long-winded answer that Terry could come off the bench. So it's
he said either
obviously
one.
something, either one. So it's something that they've thought about, and maybe they thought about at the time of the trade that, okay, at some point, one of them can be a 30-minute a game bench guy. Um, I kind of feel like Terry would take to that easier than Tyler would. But then you're starting Tyler and Duncan. I mean, we've had those conversations throughout the years.
Negative
That's
eight,
not,
-8
yeah,
net rating this year. The two of them with Jimmy and Bam
yeah, yeah. No,
with
so
a
no, they have.
138 defensive rating.
You're right,
The offense
exactly. You
was
and I,
amazing, right? 130 offensive
you,
rating, but
you,
138
you,
defensive rating.
you be Brady, Greg, and somebody else from 5RSN might score off that group.
We could do
I
that.
don't.
If the four of us, can get on
Yeah.
the floor and
I'll
allow a
coach.
140 defensive rating. We can allow
I,
that.
as my friend Shandell calls me, I'll just be Coach Sco. Yeah, I'll sit on the sidelines on that. You can take Brian and Sean
Sean?
or Eternal or somebody else along those lines. Yeah, probably. Yeah, exactly. Well, Norris Cole's with our network from time to time. You guys can handle him. Listen, we appreciate everybody following us. Make sure you check out the Discord. Sign up for the Better Edge contest. We are continuing to operate here. We're going to be doing something else. What do you want to mention on playback? If you're not on playback, sign up at playback.tv/5RSN, or just sign up, just download the playback app and search for 5 Reasons Sports. You'll find us. Um, we're going to start doing a weekly playback show, just the four of us. Okay. We're actually going to get the four of us in one place. We're going to do a weekly playback show. We're going to put it here afterwards, but the advantage of being there on playback is that we will interact with you at the time like we do on the YouTube channel. It's just that playback gives us the opportunity to actually play highlights and other things along those lines and react to that stuff. So it's kind of like us talking, us watching the highlights, and us interacting with you. So it kind of combines everything that we do in one place. We're going to start doing those. I believe we're going to do the first one on Wednesday night. So make sure you have the playback app before that. We're going to continue, again, operating throughout the summer, up through the draft, up through free agency. In August, come find me because I'll take any topic you can give me. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.